Welcome to Rates and Barrels. It's Tuesday, June 10th. Derek Van Riper, Eno Saris here with you. On this episode, we discuss the debut of Roman Anthony, some podcast bad luck yesterday. As our episode was being processed, we learned that Anthony was promoted by the Red Sox to make his major league debut in Monday's game. So we'll discuss that. Eury Pérez is back from the 60-day IL. We'll talk about where his stuff is at right now and how he looked compared to previous opportunities he's had in the big leagues. We're going to take a full-scale check-in on the NL wildcard picture because we're about a little more than a third of the way into the season. So going to dig into some teams that are trying to push themselves into clear buyer status as the trade deadline is less than 2 months away. We're also going to do a bit of a deep dive on the Padres with Dennis Lin on today's episode as well. So a lot of ground to cover. Roman Anthony, promoted by the Red Sox. Part of the corresponding move there, of course, Wilyer Abreu went on the IL with an oblique strain. So that's what opened up this opportunity for Roman Anthony. But it was a debut as anticipated, probably as Jack Caglione's arrival recently in Kansas City. We did see a nice 111.2 comebacker, happened to hit Shane Baz in or around the glute area. That was the highest EV of any batted ball in Monday's game. But the hype is certainly as high as it gets for a prospect, especially for a Red Sox team that's still just not quite firing on all cylinders. So high expectations for Roman Anthony from day one. What did you see, though, in the debut?
It's everything that he's done, which is take walks, make contact, and hit the ball hard, albeit kind of maybe on the ground. It's the one thing he's been struggling with. He's got his ground ball rate, Roman Anthony does, up from, it was in the 60s when he first debuted. But he's been consistently in the 50s. So he's going to be a guy who hits the ball hard and often on the ground. A Christian Yelich comp is not impossible for me. You've got a lefty with speed and power, but this little bit of an asterisk when it comes to how often he hits the ball on the ground. And I mean, hey, that would be an awesome outcome, like Yelich has an MVP, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Okay, good. This is how my brain works. Anyway, so Roman, I think, showed everything that you wanted to, even though in a small sample. The only thing I worry about is that corresponding move. I do not like that corresponding move. He is up to replace an injured player, and it's not some sort of injury that's like, he's out for the year. He's up to replace an injured player. I believe he goes back down when the player is back.
So this is different in terms of the playing time outlook than what we saw with Jack. When Jack got promoted by the Royals, it was a clear he has a spot to call his own, and it's going to be his own performance, not roster dynamics that dictate whether or not this is a permanent call-up. I looked at it just breaking down like by start so far. Through 68 games this season, Jarren Duran has started 67 of them. Not a surprise. He's their primary leadoff guy, always there. Ceddanne Rafaela has started 59. Abreu has started 53. And then Christian Campbell's been moving around in the infield. He has started 56 games. And since Campbell is not part of that outfield mix, it's Duran, it's Rafaela, and Abreu that you're looking at for playing time. Duran's not going anywhere. So that's a locked in 100% share or near 100% share of playing time going to him. Abreu's playing really well. I mean, he's got a 321 OBP, 471 slug, 13 homers, 4 steals, plays a good defensive right field, which is important as well. Tack that on top of what he brings. I think if there's a way for Roman Anthony to stick aside from someone else getting hurt, it's probably Rafaela moving into that super utility role. That was something we were speculating on back in the spring. And I guess the question is Rafaela showing you enough to hold on to that role when things get more crowded? I know this is a problem for probably 3 or 4 weeks down the road, maybe longer, depending on the severity of that strain. But usually the oblique strains take a little more than the 10-day minimum. Rafaela's doing a few things better than we've seen before, right? He's got a 301 OBP. He's got a 12.1% barrel rate. It's supported by more hard contact. And we know he's a great defender at a premium position too. So that also puts a lot of pressure on.
Yeah, I think he was even a little unlucky early on. I mean, to have a 289 BABIP after all those nice things you said about him doesn't seem to fit, especially since he has legs. And he doesn't really, he's not like a such an extreme puller that the shift is stealing all these. So I think he's been coming around. You know, I went and spent a fairly large FAB on him in our listener league, and he's not my type of player all the way. Like he chases more than anybody, and there's a fair amount of pressure on his glove to stay in the lineup. But Ceddanne Rafaela also, in June has a 294 average, a 368, 588 slugging. And I know that's a tiny sample, but May 266, 303, 394. So there's been this sort of progression where he's been, walking a little bit more, hitting for more power. And I just think that glove baseline, like all the people you named, they're all good hitters. He's the best defender. If you go to Jaron Duran, I think, in center field and Anthony on the corners, I would say that's a below average defensive outfield. And you might be hurting the major league progression of an important player instead of Rafael. So I think it's yes, you're right. That is the battle. It's Anthony against Rafaela. But Rafaela has a leg up in that his defense is so good.
Yeah, K rate's coming down too. For as much as he has that free swinging approach, it's still a 45.7% O swing percentage. It's going to keep him at or near the top of that leaderboard, depending on where you put the qualifiers on it. But at 19.7% K rate's a massive improvement. So we are seeing some changes from Rafaela that make him a more well-rounded player. It's not surprising given how young he is, right? He's just 24. So the fact that he's getting better shouldn't really be a shock to anybody.
We should leave the door open for four of them to be on the roster. Because Rafaela's glove is so good, he could be the backup center fielder. He could play some days. You could try to mix it up. But it is a little bit weird to have Roman Anthony in the big leagues and be sitting, every third day.
Where do you think the Red Sox rank in WOBA as a team entering play on Tuesday?
I'm afraid of them in pitching matchups. Now you're going to tell me I'm wrong. I think that they are good. I would say they're top 10.
Yeah, they're sixth, 330 WOBA for the season. I think there's something, I don't know, in the narrative that doesn't line up with the actual results. I don't quite know like where that's coming from exactly, but you'd get the sense that they would be like a fringy top 10 or almost league average the way people sometimes talk about them as a team.
I wonder if the Duran rumors that we're starting to see are real. What the Red Sox could do that might be a little bit interesting is buy for a little bit for this year, but next year too. Like the Crochet acquisition in a way, right? It's like it helps you now, but it also helps you later. So somebody that is under team control for a while. I don't know. There aren't that many options though. Like I'm writing this starting pitching trade deadline piece, and who's out there? Like Sandy Alcantara?
I mean, like actual tradable controlled pitching
On teams that are probably selling. I mean, I guess you could wait for certain teams to come to the fore. Like I guess Sugano from the Orioles.
Right, but that's not even close to what you'd be looking for in a Jaron Duran trade.
Yeah, and that doesn't help the Red Sox. I'm just saying, in terms of available arms.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, do you go to the Pirates? Like, would Mitch Keller, who's under contract for a while, at a reasonable deal, would that be something interesting?
Oh, I mean, I would speculate that Bob Nutting would love to save some money since he's already offered a long-term deal to Keller and it's been signed. So I think you may have a motivated seller there, at least at the ownership level.
If the Rangers fall behind now, maybe some stuff comes online there.
Well, and that's where I think when we get to the NL playoff picture, I think finding some teams that are currently in that window where these next 6-7 weeks will ultimately determine their plans, that's going to open up a few more options for teams seeking pitching. The teams that are sitting with 10 or 15% playoff odds 6 or 7 weeks from now will be much more comfortable getting better for the future. So I think that's probably the thing that needs to happen to really unlock a little bit more. I mean, you think about some of the teams that have extra depth. Philly, we talked about it with Andrew Painter and Mick Abel, and maybe the possibility of going to a 6-man rotation late in the year, but they could trade a starter theoretically for, but they don't. What are they going to trade a starter for? A reliever? That doesn't make any
Yeah.
sense. Just make the starter a reliever.
And the rumored places that Duran might end up, like the Padres, that there's no link there for like major league pitching, and there's no link there really for minor league pitching either. So, if that's the plan, then San Diego won't be the answer.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting to see how they make the pieces fit. One last thought on Roman Anthony, though. I mean, is this a case where even if you're not throwing the kinds of bids we saw for Jack Caglione out there, do you get somewhat close? Do you get 2/3 of the way there in case someone else gets hurt, or in case the Abreu injury news is worse than expected? I mean, because the possible payoff could be pretty significant for any extended period of time that Anthony has the opportunity to play in 2025.
I mean, I think that the bids will be on the 30% level, just like Jack Hagelin. I think those will be the winning bids. I wouldn't be surprised if Anthony has about the same level of results in terms of how much it costs to get him. Me personally, I would probably not go that far just because of this cloudiness of future role and how long it would be. I mean, if I was building my perfect bid for Roman Anthony, it would probably start with 100, because even 4 weeks of really good play could be worth $100, and then you add, I'm just doing this off the top of my head, but then you might add like $50 for the chance that, he sticks after that, or maybe another 100. It's hard to get to 300. 300 is like where I'm like, everything's lining up, and I'm just not sure that last piece lines up for Roman Anthony in terms of what happens when Wilyer Abreu is back.
I think it's funny because, a year from now, this will be long-term resolved, and it will be funny to look back at something like this and say, oh man, that was the problem the Red Sox were dealing with when Roman Anthony arrived. And now he's a fixture in the lineup, and I can't believe we ever questioned how his role was going to be. But I'm with you. I think you do have to worry about that given the way he got on the roster and given the logjam that they've had this entire time.
Yeah, I think if Ceddanne Rafaela regresses at all and just stays as like a 70 WRC plus guy, then he's a backup and everything is solved. Oh, this I see on the wire. Breaking news. Breaking news. How we've got breaking news out of Milwaukee country. Tell me, DVR, what is this breaking news?
Jeff Passan of ESPN reporting Jacob Misiorowski coming up and starting on Thursday, which is very, very on point for the conversation we had yesterday. For me, I'm excited that he's coming up to start right away. That elevates my excitement level, because knowing that there's probably some kind of innings cap there eventually, I had some questions about what the role was going to be, but they're going to go ahead and insert him in the rotation right away. We're looking at the projected starters grid. It looks like the Brewers are going to move Jose Quintana back from Thursday to Friday, Freddie Peralta back from Friday to Saturday, maybe use a 6-man rotation for a little while. And they've done this before. They do all sorts of creative things with that starting pitching unit. So Jacob Misiorowski coming up for that debut. I mean, look, we're excited about him. He was firmly in that conversation. I think you had him second out of the 4 pitchers that we talked about yet to debut as far as the possible impact. So what does the arsenal look like right now for Misiorowski a couple days before his big league debut?
Here are the numbers I was citing the other day. These are his AAA stuff plus and location plus numbers. I put forth to you that you might be surprised if you hadn't heard that last episode that he has a 104 location plus on the 4-seamer, a usable 98 on the slider, and the change looks like he locates it well. So the only pitch that he really struggles to put where he wants it to is the curve, which I would suggest is not great, but it also, still allows it to be a 2-strike pitch for him. If you imagine him against lefties, he can be 4-seam slider change with a reduction of the use of sliders. And if you can imagine him against righties, he can be four-seam slider curve with not that many curves. He could be successful four-seam slider. There's a lot of guys who are mostly four-seam slider just against righties. So I think the arsenal works. I think that the location concerns are maybe overblown. I'm fully into this. However, I will have to point out that I am fully stuff-pilled and that I make this mistake all the time, that I love pitchers too much that don't locate well. But when I watch him, I see that's a special arm. I think that's a really good, interesting fastball. It's really high velo. I think the slider's a good pitch, even if the stuff plus has it around average. I think there's a workable arsenal here. He has really good numbers in the minor leagues. And so we'll have to see. We'll have to see how it plays out in the major leagues. But I'm excited about this. I guess I don't think they'll go to a 6-man. I think that their use of Chad Patrick and Quinn Priester has, they've used openers for Quinn Priester. They've used him, for 4 or 3 innings at a time. They've used Chad Patrick for 4 innings at a time. So I think that it's more like 3 guys for 2 spots, a little bit like an outfield rotation, where they're all designed to come up around the same time in the rotation, and somebody will start and somebody will follow, and whenever the follower is needed more urgently, then you just hope the next guy can pitch more innings. You know what I mean? Like 3 guys for 2 spots. I think if there's any team in baseball that could figure out 3 starters for 2 spots, it's this current Milwaukee team.
I also have noticed that there have been some folks writing about the Brewers' pitching depth. Maybe they're one of the teams that could trade a pitcher. Aaron Savali could be a guy that gets moved, even if the Brewers are playing for right now. They need bats. There are teams that need arms. Like they could line up with someone at some point as well. They have an off day on the schedule on Monday to kick off next week before 3 on the road in Chicago, 3 on the road in Minnesota. But as the schedule lines up right now, home debut for Misiorowski on Thursday. He'd make his next start against a really good Cubs team on the road at Wrigley. If that holds up,
that's a little
keep
dangerous.
An eye on. A little dangerous to roll him out there, but
I think as positive as was about him as a pitcher, if this has now become a fantasy conversation about how deeply to go into this, I don't know that I would drop a really established, arm. I don't, off the top of the head, know of somebody that fits like this, but like a semi-struggling, established arm. I'm not sure I'd do it in 10 and 12s because you could drop that guy and then Misiorowski gets 1 start and it's not that great, or it's an okay start and they announce that he's going back down, and this was just like massaging the schedule sort of thing.
I hope it's not that, but yeah, the would you rathers in this case. I mean, are you dropping? We talked about Lance McCullers going into the weekend. Would you drop Lance McCullers to take the flyer on Misiorowski?
That's a really good would you rather right off the bat. Do you do this?
I'm proud of myself. Yeah.
No.
Really? Okay. Interesting. I probably would.
Maybe.
I probably would, because
give me another name so I can figure out a constellation here.
How about someone else that could eventually be in a crowded situation? Griffin Canning. Would you drop Griffin Canning to go get Jacob Misiorowski?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I would.
Yeah, there's a place for Misiorowski on a lot of 12-team rosters, and I would guess that your worst pitcher on your bench, especially, is someone you would drop to take the chance on Misiorowski. 30% plus K rates. I know the walk rate is a little bit of a concern. Doesn't give up homers. Has electric stuff. Oh, by the way, the body comp. You haven't seen Jacob Misiorowski. It's kind of like a sporer, like a very wacky waving
skinny,
inflatable
tall
arm 2-man, skinny, tall, like whippy delivery. I think you'd say I think guys are gonna have a really hard time hitting Jacob Misiorowski. So very excited to see where this goes. Mitch Keller. You gonna drop Mitch Keller?
Yeah, I'm pretty careful with Mitch Keller usage. I've got him in some places, and I usually just start him at home. So if it's just a home starter, then that's just basically a team streamer. I feel like you can replace that.
Yeah, a lot of people have one of those on their roster, so there's room, as we were saying before. We did see Eury Pérez return on Monday. A lot of stuff happened on Monday, actually. I'm just curious, and the velo was definitely there. Did you see something that significantly changed in Eury Perez's shapes compared to when we saw him in the big leagues in 2023 before he had Tommy John surgery?
Yeah, for your visual learners, I thought this would be worthwhile just to put up the movement profiles next to each other. You can kind of toggle these in Baseball Savant, but putting them next to each other, a couple things emerge right away. I think the slider's back. It's just as hard as it was. It has even maybe a little bit more depth than it used to. Stuff Plus loves it. I think the slider is there for him. He has differentiated the curve more this in his return from the slider than he used to. So now the curve is a little bit slower now, but it's a lot bigger and it got more sweep. And so I wouldn't be surprised if it was a sweeper. But he's got two distinct breaking balls, whereas before it was kind of one little mushy, um, you know, one's 86 and does this, and one's 81 and 82 and does this. You know what I mean? This is a bigger differentiation. Lastly, he has added a sinker, and I think that'll be really good for him. I think it'll give him two fastballs, really electric fastballs. And the only thing that didn't go well was the command. I would say that yes, command come back slowly after Tommy John, and maybe you could have predicted this. I'll take that as a reminder next time I'm ranking somebody like this. I would also say that the Sandy Alcantara outcome is a little extreme. I know it's like right in front of us, right? But I think that's a little extreme. There are other guys that might have a little bit of a foible with the command when they come back and sort of figure it out. Alcantara, like losing a pitch to Tommy John with the slider basically, is extreme. And I don't think I saw the same thing with Eury. So I think Eury will actually be fine this year. I think he'll have some dominant starts this year.
Yeah, interesting too. I saw the location plus number from the outing on Monday was an 89, in the range of what he was doing in 2023. Lower than you'd like. I think his overall number has been a 98 over the course of his time in the big leagues, so closer to overall average. I imagine that comes back. I came away pretty encouraged despite results that were less than what you wanted in a two-start week, with the first being against the Pirates. That felt like a really soft landing spot. So there were plenty of leagues where I said, I'll take the chance. Maybe he'll go 5 at least one time in these two starts and get a win. The corresponding move, by the way, Ryan Weathers to the 60-day IL with a lat strain. So that's a bit of a bummer for the Marlins to lose Weathers again, as injuries continue to be a problem for him. Injuries continue to be a problem for Bryce Miller as well. He's back on the IL. He was trying to pitch through a bone spur in his elbow. They're saying it's elbow inflammation again, but knowing there's a bone spur there, yeah, this opens the door for Logan Evans, but I have the cloud of pessimism kind of floating over my head right now about the next update we're going to get for Bryce Miller.
Yeah, I just hope that it's bone spur surgery. I know that there's been stuff floating around that they don't take bone spurs out anymore, but if it's going to continue to lead to inflammation, I'm sure they're going to at least do some sort of exploratory arthroscopic surgery. And I'm just hoping that it's not the full TJ, and we'll see. I mean, if there's inflammation, he has to wait for the inflammation to go down to really see what's going on there with an MRI anyway. And to some extent, they know what maybe is going on in there. So I don't feel as worried as I did when I watched Corbin Burns walk off the mound.
Well, yeah, that was a pretty clear my elbow's aft situation.
Yeah. So I'm hoping that because this is sort of a long-term, it's pain, it's inflammation, that even if he does have a surgery, that it's one of the smaller ones, and maybe he can come back for the beginning of next season. Anyway, no surgery is great, and so it's not great news overall. Logan Evans, though, showed up in our AAA Stuff Plus report. He has a really good slider, and I think he has a little bit of that je ne sais quoi pitchability that to some extent he's figured out how to use his best pitch and move pitches around it. So I actually like Logan Evans. I think he's a pickup.
You would prioritize him below Misiorowski, though, right? Just to confirm something that I've already suspected.
Yeah, I mean, you don't, when you look at Logan Evans' profile, you don't see these good strikeout rates, in the minors or the majors, and even in terms of stuff like the slider being a 115, that's great. The curve being 117, that's great. But the four seam fastball is a 67 stuff plus. So he could have some commonalities with like a Mitch Spence in a way. I don't know. I'm trying to think of cutter, slider, curve with a really bad four seam.
Hey, Mitch Spence back in the rotation for the A's, by the way. So deep leaguers take note. He's actually starting on Tuesday against the Angels. Might actually be able to hold on to that spot. Quick palate cleanser, though, since we were just talking about a bunch of injury-related things. How about Denzel Clarke yet again? Maybe the best catch we've seen ever. Is it the catch of the year? I would say for sure. Robbing Nolan Shanuel of a homer. I mean, fully extended on the top of the wall, reaching with his back to home plate and pulling that ball back in. Just insane. I think he's got 3 catches like that, something like 6 defensive runs saved already playing center field for the A's. Just a remarkable start to his career defensively.
Yeah, as positive as his work at the plate has been negative to some extent. But I think that he can figure out the strikeouts. He's calming down. I think also moments like that for Denzel Clarke, could he bring that with him to the plate in a positive way? Feel a little bit more like I've been showing them that I belong with the glove. Everyone was sort of celebrating me for that catch. Now, maybe I can sort of calm down and be myself at the plate as well. So I don't know what his future is, and I think he's pretty interesting player because his projections are for like an 80 WRC plus basically. But an elite outfielder, even Kevin Kiermaier had a slightly better WRC plus than 80. So I think he still needs to do some work, but it's a really exciting play. It's really fun to watch.
Yeah, I mean, there's power, there's speed. We saw a lower strikeout rate at AAA this year. Obviously, with the ABS system, that's always going to be a little bit noisy, but plenty to like with Denzel Clarke, at least defensively, and that can always be enough to open up the gates for more playing time and kind of keep you in the lineup, give you that opportunity to whittle away at that K rate and become a long-term fixture in that outfield. Some other news and notes here. Justin Martinez left his appearance Monday with tightness in his elbow. He is scheduled for an MRI. It just seems like the bad injury news keeps piling up on Arizona.
Yeah, it's not good news. Guess pick up your Shelby Millers.
Yeah, I guess that's the simple reaction on that one. Corbin Carroll, by the way, playing through some hamstring tightness. He actually homered on Monday. That was a game the Diamondbacks won thanks to a Josh Naylor walk-off. So it's not all bad news for the Diamondbacks, but they have been kind of grinding through it recently. We had some more breaking news just a little while ago, too. Jordan Westburg and Cedric Mullins have been activated by the Orioles. Heston Kjerstad option back to AAA, and Emmanuel Rivera actually DFA'd to create space on the roster.
Yeah, and Kjerstad just didn't access the power. The kind of strikeout rate that he was showing is playable. 27, 28% strikeout rate is playable if you're showing power and patience. He's shown patience at different times, but this time he was chasing and not turning into enough power. 8% barrel rate. I don't actually think that's enough of a barrel rate with a 27% strikeout rate. You need to be above 10% on the barrel rate, I think, to make that sort of thing work. And then the chase rate was just really expanding up to 42% for Kjerstad this time around. So I don't know would I have an answer for him. When I look through, his swing tilt comps, he kind of was stuck in between where, at his tilt, he needs to either have more bat speed or flatten up so that he can cover more of the zone. So I think he has a lot of work to do, which is unfortunate because, when we saw Kjerstad in the futures in the AFL, he looked really exciting. We've had a lot of people be very excited about him, but at 26, with 314 plate appearances under his belt, I don't really have a thing I can circle where I say this is why Heston Kjerstad would be good in the future.
Yeah, trending more towards that throw-in level for keeper and dynasty as opposed to someone you'd be really excited about going to get, and had a little opportunity and just couldn't cash it in with all the injuries the Orioles have had throughout the first half of this season. I did see a note too. Ryan Helsley, who blew a save on Monday, was pitching through a toe injury that required a really uncomfortable insert in his shoe. He does feel great now, despite the blown save on Monday. So maybe things are trending in the right direction. So maybe we'll see a run of Ryan Helsley looking more like himself here in the months ahead.
Rash of toe problems. Francisco Lindor's toe is broken and fractured, and I feel like there was another toe I was learning about.
Yeah, learning about toes. That's what we do here on Rates and Barrels.
Bets the toe. That's right. Thank you, Producer Brian.
Producer Brian bailing us out yet again.
The rule of three. It's not an example until you have three.
The rule of three, rule of five, lots of rules. Now it is our pleasure to be joined by Dennis Lin, senior writer covering the Padres for us. And Dennis, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
So Padres just opened up a series on Monday with the Dodgers, and from 2,000 miles away, it felt like a playoff atmosphere at the ballpark. This has become one of the best rivalries in the game. And what was it like at Petco? What was the vibe?
Honestly, it felt a little bit like last October, kind of like we just picked up where we left off before, Petco Park kind of went silent with those, the first of two back-to-back shutouts by the Dodgers, pretty much the Dodgers bullpen. But I mean, 45K on a Monday night. I know school's out, but at the same time, I mean, it is Monday. It was Monday, so this is
how many Dodgers fans were there?
Alden Gonzalez and I were trying to eyeball it. I think we settled on a third, which is,
wow,
at least for the Padres, better than it used to be. It used to be like
it's way better than it used to be.
But yeah, I think about a third, but maybe more. It was hard to tell, but everyone was loud and engaged, so it all kind of blends together at that point.
It was a fun game.
This team's been surprising to this point. I mean, they've had a lot of injuries they've been dealing with. And I was reading in your story today, Yu Darvish, he's just been on this unusual rehab track so far. Are we still looking at a few weeks before he's potentially ready to rejoin this rotation?
It's really hard to say. I know internally there's optimism that they think he can make his season debut before the end of the month. But at the same time, he's almost 39. He's had elbow trouble for, years and years. He had a Tommy John surgery a decade ago. So I don't want to speculate too much, but I mean, just like any other pitcher, he probably has some damage in that elbow. And for him, he's obviously got that history. So they're slow playing him, hoping that, he can really provide whatever he's got left this season, maybe closer to the end of the season, if that's what it takes. If they can get it back, sooner than later, that would be great because, they're dealing with, Michael King also being down, and they're, pitching some very inexperienced pitchers at the back of the rotation. So anything they can get from Darvish at this point would be a plus. So I think if you're looking at the end of the month, maybe that's a realistic goal. But if that doesn't happen, we'll see. It's just kind of based on how he feels and how he recovers from, every progressive throwing session. So right now they're trying to, let him dictate, how his recovery goes.
What's the concrete next step? It's not even a game yet. It's just a bullpen or something?
Yeah, just the other day he threw another up-down bullpen session at Petco. So
now they're waiting to see how he feels.
Yeah, see how he feels. Maybe another one. Maybe he has another rehab start soon. Maybe a sim game. I don't think he's the kind of guy at this point in his career who wants to do too many rehab games. I mean, he went to Las Vegas last month and didn't come out of it feeling very good. I think he kind of cited the altitude and elevation out there. So we'll see. It's just kind of a day-by-day, week-by-week basis with them.
The pitching staff on the Padres is just a really interesting, in an interesting situation. I'm writing up a piece that's going to be about which teams need starting pitching the most. And I think I got to put the Padres in it. In terms of the depth charts at Fangraphs, they're 14th overall, which is, you can maybe manage that. But another thing I noticed is that they're only 17th if you look at the top three guys, and that's without King. So now, King comes back. They're probably a top half rotation at the top, but it's not even obvious to me whether or not they want just a guy to get them to the postseason, like a back end rotation guy, or if their sights are higher. Do you have an idea of if they're looking for impact in the rotation, if they're just looking for an arm that can help him, not be a rookie that's in the 5 slot.
Well, they're run by AJ Preller, so they always tend to shoot high if they
That's
can.
right.
Now it's complicated this year because they really need a left fielder. I think everyone's seen that for a couple months now. They need at least maybe 2 bats, including that left fielder, whoever it ends up being, assuming they trade
Because
for
Sheets
one.
is batting well, just to be clear, it's the glove. I mean, we've seen him bobble throws and face plant in the wall, and he's not a very good outfielder.
Yeah. Thankfully, I mean he didn't even miss a game after he had his last run in with the left field wall at Petco. So, but yeah, that's not ideal. They don't want to put him out there too much. It's not fair to him. I mean, he's a DH occasional first baseman, and he's been one of their most pleasant surprises on offense. But yeah, with multiple really obvious needs, they don't have a lot of trade capital left, including on the farm system. So it's kind of a matter of how do you balance this, and then how does King and Darvish, how do they look like a month from now? So I think it's kind of a play by ear kind of thing. But Preller has been connected to Jarren Duran for a while now, so that kind of shows you where his head is at potentially on the trade market. So I wouldn't limit him to anything, even if it doesn't look like he has not much left in terms of farm system capital. But I think on the starting pitching front, if they can just get like maybe a solid mid to back end rotation guy, that would really help us, especially considering the uncertainty with Darvish and King.
What do you think some of the structure of those deals is going to look like? I mean, the Padres' financial situation makes this extra difficult on top of having traded a lot of prospects already. And even though they scout and add to the organization pretty effectively, like the cupboard's a little bit light there. How do they handle this? Do they give up future value in exchange for a team eating salary on players they acquire? Like, how much does that narrow the types of players they can actually add to fill these voids?
Yeah, what is the money situation?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think they're over the second luxury tax threshold right now. So it's not like this team, despite all the narratives in the offseason, they are spending money, and they do, I think, have some dry powder at the deadline, which partially explains why they really didn't spend much money outside of Nick Pivetta, and even in the offseason, even he's only making like $4 million this year, so it's a really backloaded deal. But I think it's going to be a little limited in that aspect too, because already being over the second threshold, I don't know if I see them going over the third threshold. They've got this ownership dispute that's ongoing, and when you have ownership at stake, I think teams just tend to be a little more conservative. But this is the second to last year of Preller's contract. I think you saw last deadline, he wasn't afraid to trade a bunch of prospects for a rental reliever and Tanner Scott. I know he also got Jason Adam, who's still been really good, but I don't know that they're going to throw caution to the wind just with how much money they have committed right now to the luxury tax.
Yeah, I wonder how far into the future AJ Preller is going to have to navigate the mess of some of the long-term deals they've had, because what's been happening all along is we've been looking at this and saying, this is really fun. This middle part's great, but the end is going to be just an absolute disaster trying to get things back on track, at least as they are currently going. This is the lineup right now. I mean, you mentioned the need for probably multiple bats. They're 21st in WOBA. And the core guys, Machado, Tatis, Jackson Merrill, they're doing things that are within the norms of their projections. You could probably argue Tatis can be better than he's been so far, but the fact that he's healthy is huge for them. I look at Xander Bogaerts as a guy that Eno has pointed out many times. His contract in particular, he's 8 more years on that deal. It runs through 2033. And what we're seeing is just no power whatsoever. What's going on with Bogaerts, the play? I know he's 32, but this sort of decline seems to be happening faster than expected. Is this a function of the shoulder injuries he's dealt with, or something else going on? Or do you actually see a little bit of a turnaround in that power department maybe on the horizon for him?
I don't see it on the horizon, unfortunately. When they signed him to that 11-year deal, they understood, just like with Manny Machado, another 11-year guy with 11-year deal, it's probably going to be pretty ugly on the back half of those contracts. But for Xander, that kind of back half seems like it's already arrived. Even going back to last year, he fractured his shoulder, went on the IL for a significant period of time, for like maybe the first time in his career. He's had some chronic wrist issues even coming into San Diego. So maybe those injuries are just adding up. He's 32. He's actually been fine at shortstop this year. They also don't want him there long term. They got Leo DeVries, who's, if you base it on how the Padres promote prospects, probably not that far away from the majors.
No, he's like 16.
There's that lineup boost right there. It's Leo.
Yeah. Age is just a number in AJ Preller's mind. But yeah, I mean, for Xander, it's been pretty disastrous again, just with the lack of offense. And if you have him at your, if you penciled him into your number 6 spot in your lineup, just even 3 years ago, you'd say, we have maybe the deepest offense in the sport, and now he's just not providing any power, like you said, Derek. So it's pretty concerning. I think no fault of Xander's at this point. Like he's working as hard as he can, and no one would question how much he dedicates to the sport. But just physically, I think he's clearly kind of a shell of himself of who he was in Boston. So the Padres, they're kind of stuck with that contract right now. It's probably going to hamstring them for years going forward.
Yeah, but just as a relevant data point, this is the last year they're paying Eric Hosmer.
Yeah, it feels like it's been the last decade. And by the way, they just let go of Jay Groom, who they used to unload Eric Hosmer to Boston a couple years ago.
That's right.
So yeah, they're kind of finally wiping their hands clean of all that.
You mentioned having to rely on some rotation depth. I mean, Stephen Kolek, Randy Vasquez has been kind of more part of the picture in the last couple of seasons. He's getting a lot of opportunity right now too. And then over the weekend, I was watching the game on Sunday, and this doesn't happen to me often, but Ryan Bergert was starting, and I had to look him up. I had to be like, Ryan Bergert? I've never heard of Ryan Bergert. Of that group, do you see anybody, even as they get a little healthier, do you see a clear-cut favorite to remain the number 5 or the first guy up if they get everybody back at some point and these guys are all just sort of depth?
Well, if we start with Randy Vasquez, I mean, I'm sure Eno's seen the underlying metrics on him. Like, I don't know how he's doing this. He might be the most fortunate pitcher in baseball, or maybe the most resilient pitcher, because he gives up a lot of contact, doesn't strike and win out, walks quite a few guys, but he still has like a sub-4 ERA. So
amazing.
Yeah, I don't see how sustainable that is going forward. I mean, if you talk to scouts and evaluators, long term, he's probably a multi-inning reliever, maybe. Just that's how he's kind of built. But he's done an admirable job of just kind of getting the most out of his really weird profile right now. And then Ryan Bergert's only had a couple major league starts. If you actually look at the 21 draft, he came out of that in the 6th round. Out of 20 rounds, the Padres got Jackson Merrill, James Wood, Robert Gasser, Alec Jacob, Bergert, and River Ryan. So really, really good draft class.
Yeah.
And, Ryan Bergert's part of it. He looks like he could be a 5th, 6th starter for a little while now. But again, it's still early. But I think if I were to pick one to answer the question, it'd probably be right now Stephen Kolek, because he's got that sinker that really gets a ton of ground balls. He's got 4 or 5 other pitches, so he's got some stuff. He's not going to strike out guys, but he's going to get ground balls and he's going to eat innings, it seems like, if he can keep this up. So that's what they need right now, because their bullpen, especially their high leverage arms, are pretty overworked, and they need guys to kind of get deeper into games. So I think he has a good shot at sticking for a while.
I think Eno had a chance to catch up with Dylan Cease recently too, and it's in his own words, he said he's about to get hot, right? And you look at the numbers for Cease, you're like, this doesn't add up. It's like the opposite of Vasquez, the 4.72 ERA, 131 WHIP for Dylan Cease, 85 Ks and 68 2/3 innings. So there's a few guys on the roster, and Cease is one of them where you're like, okay, better days are coming. It's easier to see it with guys like that. I wanted to ask you one more question about this system. And we keep saying the cupboard's a little bit bare. I mean, Leo DeVries looks like a future superstar, highly, highly regarded prospect, and maybe is moving a bit faster than other organizations would even be moving him. Is there anybody that's rising in that organization that maybe people outside of San Diego are not talking enough about? Because they do scout really well. They do well in depth in international free agency, and they end up finding guys all the time.
Yeah, I think it's a really relevant question, especially this time of year, and especially because, I mean, even for 29 other teams, because you never know who Preller can trade. I don't think DeVries is going anywhere. Ethan Salas is hurt right now, so that might make it a little tough for them to move him if they do want to, try to dangle him for some major league help. But I look at Braden Nett, undrafted guy a couple of years ago. Obviously, the draft's been shortened, so maybe sort of like a 21st rounder, so to speak. But he's a guy who didn't have maybe a ton of amateur experience or high level amateur experience, and he's really made himself into a pretty good, enticing pro prospect with pretty decent arsenal, and looks like he's in Double A right now, doing decently. I think he could be either an intriguing trade chip or maybe a major league guy by the end of the year. Again, the Padres promote guys a lot faster than other organizations, so the definition of a major league guy is maybe a moving target with San Diego. But I think if you're looking at this guy's who's risen up the system pretty quickly, he would be near the top of the list.
I wonder also if like some very recent draft picks like Cash Mayfield, somebody that might be far away, but maybe still has that imprimatur of being a high draft pick. I believe Cash Mayfield was their first rounder last year. Yeah. So seems like somebody like that might be available as well. Don't you think? Because it's so far away.
I think so. I did talk to someone, early in the season, said, hey, I saw him in spring. He looked terrible, but I mean, that's maybe one look in spring. And I think he was dealing with the flu at the time, but I think his velo has been a little less than maybe what was initially expected. But I mean, he's, I think 19 or 20 only, was only drafted last year. So still got time to develop and maybe gain a little more shine in the prospect rankings. But I think, given the Padres timeline and what they need right now, immediately at the big league level, a guy like that is probably a prime candidate to be moved.
And just when we think we can count AJ Preller out, I think he will find a way. I think you had to guess for the deadline, buyer or seller, buyer somehow, right? That's the only way to explain it at this point.
Yeah, right now it's
Yeah, what'd you say? What did you say?
I was just saying right now it's a definite buyer. Like next few weeks could change things, but I mean, even in 23 when they were kind of right on the edge, they didn't really saw off anything. And the Padres have Michael King, Dylan Cease going to free agency next year, so yeah, they probably have to go for it.
Yeah, more problems to solve in the winter, but those can be solved later. We can solve the trade deadline first. Dennis, thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate your time and your insight.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Appreciate you having me on.
Thanks, Dennis.
Well, let's take a look at the NL playoff picture. Time for a June check-in, really sort of trying to connect buyers and sellers, thinking about the direction these teams are going to go and what these next 6 or 7 weeks might bring for this group. And you look at the playoff odds, it's kind of funny to sort by odds instead of actual records, because you see a team like the Brewers going to get dinged a little bit. They're 3 games out of a wild card spot right now, but they only have a 24.7% chance of making the playoffs entering play on Tuesday. These are the Fangraphs playoff odds. If you're wondering the source on these, there's probably only 3 teams that you'd say, maybe even just 2 that you'd say are comfortably not going to make the playoffs. The Rockies, like, who are we kidding, right? They're just what are they going to do? They're 12-53. Like they're not going to find it and become a wild card team.
4. You can add the Marlins, Pirates, and Nationals. I think
Nats are 5 below 500 right now at 30-35. But yeah, the division is an uphill battle. You already got one team underperforming in Atlanta that will likely be better. The Mets are good. The Phillies are good. So that seems like a fair assessment. Like they're probably not going to find their way in.
I think that's something that is working against the Reds here, and to some extent, maybe the Brewers and Cardinals, is just that their division is, I don't want to say surprisingly, but their division is competitive. And they're going to have to play the people ahead of them a lot. And I could see them just sort of playing them all to a standstill, right? If you're the Brewers, Reds, or Cardinals, you have to beat up on the rest of the Brewers, Reds, and Cardinals in order to get in there. So I don't know how that'll play out. I mean, every division has that sort of story in it, but this division in particular is very wild card heavy, whereas some other divisions are kind of more top heavy. I don't know. I don't want to count the Reds out. So if you can count the Reds in for this conversation. But if I was running the Reds, if I was acquiring something, I would want the player that I acquired to be either super cheap and just sort of patch a hole, maybe a reliever other people aren't thinking about, or more likely a player that can be with me for a couple years. I think of that Sam Moll trade with the A's. Their bullpen is still not very good. So they could add a bullpen piece, or they could add a starter that's going to be with them for a while, if that's possible. Something I think mostly on the pitching end, because even if their hitting hasn't been amazing, I think you, as a Reds ownership, I would just be depending on the young guys to kind of step forward. Christian Encarnacion Strand, Noelvi Marte. Those are my quote unquote trade deadline acquisitions.
You're just getting healthy, basically. And Hunter Green's getting a second opinion. He's got the groin and back injuries. If Green is going to miss extended time, I think that's another thing that would be a pretty big blow for them, like just keeping them from closing ground on those wild card teams. And do you buy the division leaders as they are today as the clear cut, like, yeah, these three teams are all going to win the division? Like the Mets, they're 66.4% to win the division, 93.4% to make the playoffs. They're up 4 on the Phillies. Obviously, in June,
I
that's
think that
an
one's
insurmountable lead. That's
almost a pick 'em. I mean, I think the
yeah,
Phillies can play better than this. And
right. The Phillies are still really good. They're going to remain in buy mode, probably add to that bullpen.
if the Harper thing is only just like a sort of a minimum, then
Yeah.
I think that they'll get back again.
Cubs are up 4 on the Cards right now. They're 71.3% to win.
That one seems more insurmountable. Like that one seems more like, I think it's the Cubs.
Really? You think that
Yeah.
one's like? Do you think they're just a clear notch above the other teams chasing them?
Well, you also have to think about like what the teams will do from now until then with their roster. And I just have every belief that the Cubs are going to make a major acquisition, especially in the arms department. And I just don't see the Cardinals doing that. The last year of your GM on the way out is how much power does the other GM that's with the organization already, the guy who's going to take over from you, is he going to be like, oh yeah, please mortgage some of my assets so you can have a good, so you can play a wild card game on the way out?
I don't know if they're that siloed necessarily, though. I think they'd be. I think if you're making moves for the future, Chaim Bloom's a big part of that conversation, right? They're already.
I'm sure he's in the conversation. I'm just saying, like, he would probably be a vote against anything sort of dramatic. Now, could they get a smaller piece? Yeah, sure. But I think the Cubs are more likely to do some dramatic because everything seems to be coming together on the offensive side, and just adding a piece that could really help them, I think, in the rotation most of all. I think that the numbers that I have for this piece that I'm writing say that the Cubs right now are 23rd overall in starting pitching WAR projected the rest of the season, and their top 3 is 24th. So that screams to me impact. They don't need a guy who gets them there. They're going to get they're going to, I think, get the best pitching person on the market, the best starting pitcher on the market. And I just don't know. I don't know that I believe in the Cardinals pitching staff the way it is. I think it's headed towards the hottest part of the year with a bunch of guys that don't strike guys out.
Yeah, that's the long-term flaw that's still there. So I could see that team fading a little bit, being one of those teams that sinks closer to the we should actually sell and look a little more to the future window. Anybody else you think is going to fall out of this mix? I mean, the West right now, the Dodgers 85.1% to win the division. They're only up 1.5 games on the Giants and up 2 on the Padres, who they're in the middle of a series of right now, as we talked about earlier. 98.4% chance of making the playoffs. Like, I get that it's loaded in projection, and the quality of the roster, especially if everyone eventually gets healthy, is maybe the best in the league by a margin. But it doesn't seem like they're. I don't feel as confident in them at the moment as I expected to on the 10th of June.
Yeah, in your head, think of where you think the Dodgers rank in rest of season starting pitching WAR.
They got to be. I mean, again, taking a reasonable expectation for injured guys coming back. Mid-pack at best? 15th?
4th.
16th? How are they 4th?
They are 4th in rest of season projected WAR.
Because it puts a ton on Glasnow, Snell, and Ohtani. Like,
it
gives a lot of innings.
Gives 68 innings to Glasnow. It gives 59 to Roki. 54 to Gonsolin, 55 to Snell. It's just that all those guys are pretty good. And so that's the odds. That's why the projections are still good. It's like, well, maybe not all of them are coming back, but not all of them are not coming back.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess that's the idea. I think I'd bet against them being the fourth best rotation going forward, but yeah, I think that one might be competitive all the way down to the wire. I think it'll be more competitive than projections say, because I also don't think that the Dodgers right now want to spend a lot of prospect capital improving their rotation. They just spent a lot of money on their rotation.
They shouldn't have to at this point, based on all the additions they've made. But health is what it is. Who do you see kind of in that middle group, though? Like, I mean, the Giants, I think, have plenty of skeptics. Who do you see as being maybe the most susceptible to falling out of the race? Is it the Cardinals, or is it another team that's kind of played above its skis so far? Do you think is going to sink back to earth?
I think the Cardinals will sink back to earth. I think I think the Braves are going to amount to a comeback, but I could see it actually ultimately falling short, just because I don't know that Strider is going to be Strider this year, and there's enough questions about that roster, and the bullpen right now doesn't look good at all in Atlanta. So it's hard to circle a reason for the Braves other than, the lineup is going to be better going forward, and people are getting healthy to some extent. But losing Smith-Shawver was, I think, a big deal, and Strider not being who he is a big deal. So I think that the Cardinals will fall back. The Brewers will move into ahead of the Cardinals going forward. I think the Giants will fall back. And so basically, I think it'll be the Padres and either the Mets or Phillies are the two wild cards. And then the Cardinals, Brewers, and Giants are all fighting for that last one. If I had to pick between the Cardinals, Brewers, and Giants, I'm going to pick the Brewers. It's not what the projections say. But I also think that they might have a rabbit they can pull out of the hat in terms of finding a third baseman. I don't know why I think that. I don't know if it's the all power prospect they've got, Wilkin. I don't know if it's a trade. Or maybe even just like finding somebody, like I think of like an Abraham Toro with the Red Sox. Like, I think that might be an upgrade over the third base situation.
Yeah, they've gone down that road once before, but
yeah, I don't know if it's Toro in particular. I'm just saying I think the Brewers will be pretty active in smaller moves, and I think the smaller moves could make a big difference. I love Misiorowski coming up. And I know that they maximize their rotation, their pitchers that they do have really well. I like their bullpen a lot. So I think there's a lot to like about the Brewers, and I don't think that they've actually played as well as they could. I think there's more in there.
Yeah, it feels like they have not had their best overall stretch. I mean, they did play really well coming through that Philly series, but of their best month of the season seems like it still hasn't happened yet. And getting an upgrade at third base, among a few other things, would help a lot. They've got pitching and they've got prospects. I think that makes them viable as buyers if they feel they can make that push here at the trade deadline.
Eugenio Suarez to the Brewers.
Okay, yeah, if Arizona falls out of it, that could make sense. Or for pitching and just stay in it and then bring up Jordan Lawler.
I think that's just a bit of a mix there. I don't know exactly what the trade will look like.
Suarez for Savali.
Yeah, could work. Jarren Duran and Lucas Giolito. So watch him. Watch him. Send your scouts to the Padres. I don't know what for.
Okay, yeah. Let us know in the Discord what for, and try not to get angry with Eno, because I've seen people mentioning that they think Jarren Duran's the heart of the Red Sox. So have
maybe
fun.
Ethan Salas and
I don't think so, bud. I don't think so. I don't think that's going to happen. We could try to.
Just like the idea that like they could package Giolito, because Giolito's not under contract really for next year. There's a mutual option, but mutual options are almost nothing. They're not really anything.
No, but trading Jarren Duran to the Padres is going to take some significant gymnastics. So I'm curious if we can pull it off in the Discord. Drop a note in the episode discussions channel if you
For
think you can
Xander
solve it.
back.
Oh, yeah, for Xander back. Good one. That's rage bait. On that note,
I was just kidding, by the way. Nobody cut that one up.
we are going to go on our way out the door. You can find Eno on Blue Sky, Sarahs.bscott@social. I am DVR.bscott@social. Thanks again to Dennis Lin for dropping by and joining us on today's show. And thanks to our producer, Brian Smith, for putting this episode together. That's going to do it for this episode of Rates and Barrels. We're back with you on Wednesday.
Thanks for listening.